Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we are wrestling with a fascinating and honestly a kind of scary challenge. How do you medically induce a controlled panic attack in a patient without, causing fatal harm?
It's a fine line to walk.
We are talking about adrenergic agonists, also widely known as sympathomimetics. These are the drugs that essentially hijack your body's fight or flight system.
And this deep dive is really our shortcut to mastering the pharmacology from Chapter 30. We're focusing on the critical safety protocols and the clinical nuances of these life-saving, but you're right, inherently dangerous agents.
Okay, so to start, let's nail the core terminology. What exactly is an adrenergic agonist?
An adrenergic agonist is a drug that specifically stimulates the receptors of the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS.
And sympathomimetic is, I guess, exactly what it sounds like. It mimics the effects you'd get if you were, say, suddenly face-to-face with a bear.
That's the perfect analogy.
Huh.
And understanding their mechanism is crucial. These drugs, they work in one of two main ways. They can act through direct stimulation, where the drug molecule itself reacts directly with an alpha or a beta receptor site.
So it's like a key going right into a lock.
Exactly. Or they can use indirect stimulation. This is where they increase the levels of norepinephrine that's already in the body, ready to hit those receptors. And some drugs, like ephedrine, they actually do both.
So our mission today is to categorize these powerful drugs from, the non-specific heavy hitters you'd see in the ER to the more targeted agents for chronic conditions, and really understand how the risk profile shifts across a patient's lifespan.
Right, because when any of these receptors get stimulated, we generate that full physiological response we're aiming for therapeutically.
Things like
increased heart rate and contractility, bronchodilation, and vasoconstriction, which, elevates blood pressure.
So we're triggering every physical effect of sheer panic, but for a calculated therapeutic benefit. You mentioned a metabolic effect that I think is critical here, glycogenolysis. What does that actually mean for the patient?
It's immediate fuel mobilization. Glycogenolysis is just the breakdown of stored glucose, or glycogen, to get energy out into the system instantly.
The body's gearing up for a fight.
A physical fight or a fast flight, it needs that energy now. And that also contributes to other effects like decreased intraocular pressure, pupil dilation, and increased sweating.
If these drugs are essentially controlled poison, does the risk profile shift dramatically in certain groups? I'm looking at box 30.1, the lifespan considerations. Are children just miniature adults here?
Oh, not at all. They are uniquely sensitive. Children are at a much greater risk for serious complications.
Such as?
Significant tachycardia, hypertension, and a lot of GI distress. The margin for error is just so small.
So the dosage has to be perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dosage calculation has to be based precisely on body weight and age, and current practice strongly recommends having a second practitioner check that calculation. It's that important.
And we also have to stress the danger of, the things you can just grab off the shelf.
Yeah.
OTC cold medicines often have agents like phenylephrine, which can lead to accidental overdoses if parents aren't careful.
Exactly. Now, moving to adults, especially those getting these drugs for shock, they need constant monitoring, frequent dosage adjustments.
Right.
And they need counseling about combining these prescriptions with other OTC drugs or even alternative therapies. Things like certain herbal stimulants can dangerously amplify the effects.
What about pregnancy?
Yeah, with pregnancy and lactation, adequate studies are usually non-existent. So they're reserved only for emergencies where the benefit to the mother just clearly outweighs the risk to the fetus.
And finally, older adults.
With older adults, their kidneys and livers are often less efficient, so they're much more susceptible to toxic drug levels.
And I imagine they experience the side effects more intensely.
Much more. They're more likely to have adverse CNS effects, cardiovascular events, respiratory distress. You always start older patients on lower doses and monitor them very closely for arrhythmias or big BP changes.
Okay, let's focus on our first major category, the alpha and beta-adrenergic agonists.
If we're thinking functionally, this is kind of the sledgehammer group.
The sledgehammer group, I like that.
It includes dopamine, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. They stimulate all the adrenergic receptors.
So they hit everything. They generate that massive sympathomimetic effect.
Yeah.
And they're used for critical conditions, right? Like hypotensive shock or cardiac arrest.
Exactly.
Let's focus on the prototype, dopamine. Why is this specific, naturally occurring catecholamine so often the sympathomimetic of choice for shock?
Dopamine has a really distinct therapeutic advantage over something like epinephrine. While it successfully stimulates the heart and raises blood pressure, it also does something unique.
And what's that?
It causes renal and splanchnic arterial dilation.
So if I can translate that, dopamine is the kidney-friendly shock drug.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Because unlike other powerful vasoconstrictors, it keeps blood flowing to the organs, especially the kidneys, that tend to shut down first during a crisis.
Precisely. We also have epinephrine, of course, which is essential for anaphylaxis and cardiac emergencies. And then there's ephedrine, which is declining in use, but is still important to know about.
Okay, we have to talk about the absolute most terrifying complication when you're giving these ephedrine. But first, the contraindications.
Right. They absolutely cannot be used in patients with pheochromocytoma. That's a tumor that's already flooding the system with catecholamines. Adding more would be fatal.
Makes sense.
And they're also contraindicated in tachyarrhythmias, because the key insight here is that these drugs dramatically increase the heart's oxygen demand, which could cause a fetal heart attack.
Critical safety alert time. Since these drugs cause intense local vasoconstriction, we have to talk about the danger of extravasation from an IV.
Yes, this is a huge deal. If the drug leaks out of the vein, that intense clamping down of blood vessels can lead to tissue death, to necrosis in that limb.
So what's the intervention? This is a non-negotiable safety point in the ICU.
The immediate intervention, if you see infiltration, is to have phentolamine on standby.
Phentolamine.
It's an alpha-blocking agent. You infuse it locally, right into the site, to counteract the vasoconstriction and save the tissue.
That's fantastic context. Okay, let's shift from these sledgehammers to the scalpels.
The more specific agents.
The alpha-specific agonists like phenylephrine, midodrine, and clonidine.
Phenylephrine is our prototype here. It's a powerful stimulant of postsynaptic alpha-adrenergic receptors. It causes vasoconstriction, but with very little effect on the heart's beta receptors.
And its uses.
Parenterally for shock. Topically, it's a highly effective vasoconstrictor. You see it in nasal sprays all the time for allergies.
Now, clonidine is fascinating. It's used for hypertension, which just seems totally counterintuitive for a fight-or-flight drug. How does stimulating an alpha receptor lower sympathetic outflow?
That's the paradox, isn't it?
Okay.
Clonidine specifically stimulates the CNS alpha-2 receptors.
In the brain.
Right. And these receptors act as a kind of negative feedback loop in the central nervous system. They basically tell the brain to calm down and release less norepinephrine.
So the overall effect is decreased sympathetic outflow, which lowers blood pressure.
Exactly. And that central effect is precisely why clonidine causes more of those CNS side effects, like bad dreams, sedation, that sort of thing.
What about midodrine?
Midodrine is an oral drug, and it's reserved for orthostatic hypotension. The big, crucial risk here is serious supine hypertension.
So their blood pressure gets dangerously high when they lie down.
Dangerously high. So nurses have to monitor blood pressure meticulously in standing, sitting, and supine positions.
Okay, another crucial safety alert. Patients should never stop alpha-specific agonists suddenly. Why is that so dangerous?
Because the body adapts. When you suddenly withdraw these agonists, the adrenergic receptors, they become acutely sensitized to any norepinephrine that's left.
And that causes a rebound effect.
A huge, dangerous rebound effect. We're talking severe tachycardia, hypertensive crisis, arrhythmias, and potentially death. It is an absolutely critical teaching point that the dose must be tapered over 2 to 4 days.
Wow. Okay, let's move to our final group, the beta-specific adrenergic agonists.
We should quickly note that most of the beta-specifics you see all the time, like albuterol, are beta-2 specific. They focus on the lungs.
For asthma and bronchospasm.
Right. But for our prototype, we cover the non-specific beta agonist, isoproterenol.
And what does that do?
It acts on all the beta receptors, so you get bronchodilation, vasodilation, and a dramatic increase in heart rate and contractility. That's what we call a positive inotropic effect.
It sounds like a fantastic drug for cardiac standstill, but we rarely use it anymore. Why?
It's because of something called the coronary steal effect. This is a really critical insight.
Okay.
Research showed that isoproterenol can actually divert blood away from injured areas of the heart muscle. It essentially steals crucial oxygen, and that can increase the size of a heart attack.
So it's reserved for very specific emergencies now.
Very specific, like managing heart block in transplanted hearts where nothing else is working. And its adverse effects are classic sympathetic stimulation, restlessness, anxiety, tachycardia, angina.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner, in actual practice?
Yeah.
Let's synthesize the critical nursing considerations here.
Assessment is just paramount. You need baseline data before you even start.
Vital signs, ECG, respiratory status.
Absolutely. You need to know their BP, pulse, listen for adventitious sounds, monitor their urine output, which is a great indicator of kidney perfusion, and get baseline labs for renal and hepatic function.
And in implementation, safety is number one. That means extreme vigilance in dose calculation, proper dilution, and remembering the phentolamine rule for extravasation.
We also need to think about comfort. Minimizing light exposure because their pupils are dilated, encouraging them to void before dosing to help with urinary retention, and just basic relaxation for the anxiety.
The danger of additive effects can't be overstated. We saw this so vividly in the MC case study.
Yeah, the 26-year-old man taking prescribed ephedrine, who then decided to self-medicate his cold with OTC decongestants.
Which also contains sympathomimetics like phenylephrine.
He was stacking them, and he had no idea.
Wow, a racing pulse, blood pressure of 154/86, jitters, and a feeling of impending doom. That's not just a side effect, that's full-blown clinical toxicity.
Right, and that case really drives home the essential teaching point from Box 30.4. We have to counsel patients about avoiding herbal stimulants, mayo guang, guarana, excessive caffeine, and checking all OTC products.
Because these combinations dangerously stack up.
And can lead to overstimulation, a stroke, or even death.
So to summarize, adrenergic agonists give us medical control over the fight-or-flight response, and their adverse effects are really just extensions of that very response.
Anxiety, hypertension, tachycardia, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Critical nursing practice demands vigilant monitoring of cardiovascular status, acute awareness of that extravasation risk, and thoroughly educating patients.
Especially on avoiding those additive sympathomimetics, and crucially, the danger of suddenly stopping drugs like clonidine.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up, here's a final provocative thought for you to explore. Given that critical need to taper drugs like clonidine and phenyllephrine, how might a disruption in medication access, say, during a sudden hospitalization or a supply chain issue, dramatically increase the risk of severe, life-threatening rebound hypertension for a patient who relies on these agents? Think about the systems needed to prevent that scenario.
A sobering thought.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope this has given you a concise, high-impact understanding of adrenergic agonists. Stay informed, stay safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.